It's quite an old university. It's one of the red bricks like Bristol and Birmingham. It's contemporary with them as University College. Yet it's a new university.
And I said, Dad, I'm going to university. He said, good, brilliant. I told you, you must go to university. Where are you going? And I said, Dundee. And he went, what?
Of course, in those days, there was no internet to check on things. We had to just read the paper prospectus. But Dundee certainly came over, even in those days, as somewhere that would be a friendly, welcoming place to come to.
I was sold on Dundee on the train journey into Dundee, which was a really beautiful, bright, clear day with snow in the hills. Wonderful looking city.
I remember to this day just walking along the Perth Road and looking out across the Tay, and I was just so pleased to be there.
Turning up in first year and meeting your flatmates for the first time, it kind of eased that fear of being at uni for the first time away from home, and it really made you realise that you're with people feeling exactly the same.
My first set of digs in Step Row were just about as arctic as it gets. The loo actually froze inside the building for a couple of weeks, which was character forming, to say the least.
I had digs in the Windsor Board residence, 71 the High Street, Dundee, right in the centre of the city, almost opposite Caird Hall, where I was to graduate at the end of my time there.
On a Thursday evening, if I recall correctly, it was Top of the Pops, and we all quickly gobbled our supper and then rushed round the corner into the TV lounge, where the latest release by the Beatles or whoever was on.
I actually love the fact that all the faculties mixed. You'd be at halls of residence in a room next door to a dental student or a medic, and that's very, very unusual. Then you share flats with a lawyer or with an engineer or whatever.
A lot of students in Dundee had come there by accident. They were English public school people, and then the romantic nature of red gowns and pier walks and Gaudis had attracted them to St Andrews, and they got the shock of their lives when they ended up at Dundee Taybridge Station, finding that that is where they'd actually enrolled for. But it meant there was an incredible social mix.
I always enjoyed the lectures, the tutorials, all of it. I felt very privileged to be there.
In the last two lectures, we have been discussing the polarisation of light.
The teaching and the laboratories were very good, and there was great camaraderie among the students. So, you know, you made lots of friends there, and that was terrific.
The first rector was Peter Ustinov, and I can remember him describing the American presidential elections that year, which featured Nixon.
In 1989, I was studying for my exams here in the university library, and as well running my business at the same time. So I have the dubious honour of being the first undergraduate student to own a mobile phone, but I put it on the desk while I was studying in the library, and indeed it periodically rang, once a day probably, but it did ring. And after 2 days of doing this, the librarian came over to me and in no uncertain terms ejected me from the library until I silenced my mobile phone for good.
I remember one night we were coming back from the union, a great night, get back into the lab, but the locking mechanism was broken. It was just completely broken. We had this moment where we had to try and break in to the university building, legally of course. The thinnest person was me, so I drew the short straw and had to try and squeeze in through this very short window to get into the building so we could open the door again and get everybody back in again.
My best memories, without any doubt, were the Student Union Bar, obviously. But when I went back there in the early 2000s, I was extremely disappointed to find that the Student Union Bar of my day is now the accountancy department.
We had, I think it was 1 or possibly 2 terms in the old union on the Perth Road, and then the brand new union opened, and that was amazing. To us it seemed like a massive airport sort of lounge. It was exotic almost, and huge, and so much glass. It was very unusual in the 70s as a building.
Really my first experience of real university life was going to see bands at the union when I was too young to be in there, and certainly long before I was a student at the university there.
I remember playing guitar and singing at the rugby club Christmas carol concert in Pete's Bar. And of course I remember meeting my wife at Dundee University. She was a dental student when I was studying economics. So the first time I saw her was in the union, and the second time was when I made myself an appointment at the dental school
We met in in Chalmers Hall, and we were visiting a friend who had an accident the day before, and David had a room nearby, and he was also visiting, and spontaneously we decided to go for the day to Arbroath, and so we actually spent some time chatting on the beach at Arbroath, and that's where it all got started.
You make it sound almost accidental.
I think the people that you meet when you're a student are the friends that you make for life.
I met my future wife there. I met most of my lifelong friends and my dearest friends who I'm still in touch with and still regard as my closest companions. I met them all at Dundee, so it shaped my life for the last 45 years.
I've been so lucky to start my art education in Dundee. My God, world-class teaching. People actually taught you.
We can all play our part in creating something that's bigger than any of us. A university that continues to transform, enrich and inspire.